Alright, so this is the Calc 1 Week 2 workshop. We're going to go ahead and go over the limits to infinity. So we're going to take a look at problems 1C and 1D. So the first one we see, we got limit as x is going to infinity of the square root of x cubed plus 7x over 4x cubed plus 5. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to take a look at the inside of the square root. We'll deal with the square root later. What we see is, if you plug in infinity there, obviously you're going to get infinity over infinity, so that means we need to do something else. So what you want to do is, whenever you're doing these type of problems, factor out the highest power of x. So on the top, I see the highest power of x is going to be an x cubed. So I'm going to go ahead and take out an x cubed from that top part. So that leaves me with the quantity 1 plus 7 over x squared. Now, if you want to make sure that you did that right, it's obvious that this first one here, you pull the x cubed out, you're going to get a 1. But if you want to make sure you did that second part right, where you're going to get something over another power of x, just take this x cubed and multiply it through. So if I got x cubed and I bring it over here, I see that both the x's on the bottom are going to cancel, and I'll be left with 1x on top. So I'll have the 7x, which is what I originally had. So we know that's good. Now on the bottom, I want to do the same thing, factor out the highest power. Luckily that's going to be an x cubed again. So I'll be left with 4 here, plus 5 over x cubed, right? Okay, so all this is still square rooted, of course, but not a problem right now. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is cancel out. I see that I can cancel out the x cubes, right? Okay, so that just leaves me with limit as x going to infinity. That's going to be the square root of 1 plus 7 over x squared over 4 plus 5 over x cubed. Now, what you're going to want to do is, if you plug in the infinity now, right here, the 7 over x squared, 7 over some ridiculously large number, that's just going to go to 0, right? Okay? The 1's good. 1's not dependent on x at all, so it doesn't matter. I'll have a 4, that's fine, and then a 5 over x cubed. Well, it's the same principle, right? 5 over a really big number, that's going to go to 0 also. So what this leaves me with is the square root of 1 plus 0, which is just going to be 1, over 4 plus 0, which is going to be 4. So it's going to be the square root of 1/4. Make sure you just square root the top, square root the bottom. What you're going to get is 1 over 2. So 1/2 is going to be the answer for that first one. Okay, so now we'll move on to part D. Same thing, x going to infinity. What you see here is you're going to want to use the conjugate of it. So I'm going to multiply this. Make sure you multiply by 1 so that you're not actually changing anything, right? So I'm going to multiply this by x plus this quantity over x plus that quantity. So it's just going to be multiplying it by 1. So if I do x minus x squared plus 7 square root, okay. So now I'm going to multiply it by x plus the square root of x squared plus 7 over x plus the square root of x squared plus 7. Make sure you do the something over something so that it's multiplying by 1. What I see with the top here now, so if I kind of just do the FOIL here, right? So x times x, I get an x squared. So x times negative of this quantity gives me something, right? It's negative something. Now if I do the next part, I take this quantity, which is the same as this over here, but positive, and I multiply by this x. So now I've got a negative of that x times that quantity, and then a plus x times that quantity. So those are going to cancel out. And then what I'm left with is these two here, which are the same, but they're opposite signs. So it's going to be a minus, right? And so when I take something times something else, it's kind of like squaring it. So I've got something in the square root sign, I can just square it. So that leaves me with an x squared on top, right? From the original one. My middle terms dropped out, and my end term is going to be a minus parenthesis x squared plus 7. Make sure you put that parenthesis in there, because that minus is going to distribute out. What you're going to be left with is, you can see an x squared minus x squared, so that goes to 0, minus 7, so I'll have a negative 7 on top. And what do I have on the bottom? Well, on the bottom I just have 1 times all this, so I'm just going to have all of that. So x plus the square root of x squared plus 7. Okay. So now what we're going to see, if you go out to infinity on this one. In this guy here, we're going to need to, you can see that as this bottom goes to infinity, this bottom, sorry, as x goes to infinity, this bottom gets very large. So same principles up here. If we've got some number, which we know, so -7, divided by something really large, that's going to give me 0. So as this goes to infinity, this whole thing is going to go to 0. And that's it for this week.